she kept reading Sunset. Look at that garden. Oh, it's in Oregon.
Yeah.
Look at that garden. Oh, it's in Oregon.
I'm going to Oregon.
Look at that beautiful green. Oh, it's in Oregon. Yeah. Not
So the
in
girls were
California.
in junior high ruined their lives.
Yeah.
Of course. And now where do they live?
Oregon.
Portland. Yes. Yeah.
That's, yeah, kids are great about that. I pulled that one too. Hi. That's fine. I just made my parents move here, so.
Wait, is this because your big sister graduated?
No.
Actually, it was really funny. One of the NDA members for Hector Campbell, who lives on my street, her daughter turned 12 this week, and she's like, just so you know, now that I know you're looking for a babysitter,
Very good.
my daughter will be ready soon.
I think you want to try to get a citizen.
So,
And thank you for this. It got me in for free when I wore it.
oh, good. You also sent me an email, and I have to tell you, I don't know if I sent it. So I need to go back through my emails. You
I
sent me
did
an
get
email.
your out of office.
Okay.
Notice. I went back and looked. That's all I wore.
Okay. It was during the holidays. I'm sorry. I'm happy to do it.
See how worried you look.
I appreciate, I know. Thank you. But I will go back and get you that.
It was when I read the minutes. I'm like,
Oh, that's right. We never did that.
Oh, okay. No, that's fine, because I don't like that. Because I take a picture and then I move and then it stops.
Oh, that
Good, how are you? It's Thursday night.
Well,
Thursday night.
there is supposedly a way some
Sunshine
showcase that
outside.
you can like
Yeah.
take this.
No, I'm here.
No, really, you can actually get a better picture sometimes, like than the end.
I did on the weekend.
So can I start with an announcement?
Very.
What? Okay.
Make you taller.
So we're on air.
No, I'll take it.
Oh, okay, right.
Socks on this morning, my feet were long.
The dead end on 23rd.
So the only reason I'm interrupting everybody is because we are on a very tight schedule tonight. We have to be done and out of here by like 6:28 at the latest. So I want to make sure that we give full time to the discussion. We have another meeting in here at that time.
So, and we will be going off the air after this meeting.
Yes.
So, perfect. So,
So do I start?
yeah.
Call the Budget Committee meeting to order and introductions. I'm John Stahl, the Citizen Chair.
Bonnie Dennis, Assistant Finance Director.
Haley Fish, the Finance Director.
Will Clark, City Councilor.
Kane Appen, City Councilor.
Angel Falconer, Counselor. And Ober, City Manager.
Mark Gamba, Mayor.
Michael Osborne, citizen member.
Milo Denham, citizen member.
Jesse Bowman, citizen member.
And I would actually like to make an announcement. I actually got a phone message from Ron Palmer, who is our other citizen member, and he said he would not be able to be here today and he would be submitting his official resignation later this week. So we will have an opening on this committee, which I did not get a chance to go talk to our city recorder today, but hopefully we will publish that opening soon to try to get it filled by the meetings at the end of April. So on that note, I will.
Our first order of business is to approve the minutes from December's meeting.
I'm going to approve the minutes.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the December meeting minutes. Any discussion? I guess we had a discussion about the 17th Avenue Trail there, for my information, about the litigation. Go ahead, have a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next order of business, the review of the quarterly report. And I'd like to thank Haley for the time she put into preparing this and using 8 months of actuals.
Yes.
I think is a step in the right direction.
So I wanted to, it's a little bit unconventional, but this would normally be our second quarter report. But as we're heading into the budget season and at the meeting starting April 30th, you will get a year-end projection number in those meetings. So we can discuss whether or not we'd like a third quarter report. It would just be a month different than this report. But I wanted to give you more real-time information now. Versus doing just the information that we had as of December. So that's a little bit unconventional. Any thoughts on that?
When you provide the budget, will you give us a second quarter back at March 30 or December 31st?
No, I wasn't planning to prepare one as of December 31st. And as of March 30, I mean, the most current would be March, the end of March 31st. So,
Right, but the last one,
this one, it was replacing the December 31st.
so we never got a December 31st, right?
Correct, because we are here now and I wanted to get
Right,
the most.
and I appreciate that. I like that. But when you do the budget, can you give us the quarters, full quarters?
We won't be
We won't
looking
have
back
that.
is the problem. So at that point, we're going to be looking forward into the new year. If the budget committee would like to make a vote and ask for us to go back and do that additional work, we can talk about it, but I'm not sure that it gets you into the next quarter.
Well, I'm used to, in a budget process, at least in the public sector,
Sure.
quarterly buckets to see how things move through time. And so that's why I don't need it now, but I was thinking during the budget, we would have the quarterly buckets.
Does the committee want to make a motion? So part of why I'm doing it in this way is also just to make sure, as we're going into the budget process, making sure that the committee is the one giving direction to Haley. So if you want something, I just want to make sure it's coming from the majority and not coming from single individuals. It's going to get tempting, especially as we get into issues that we're really caring about on specific topics. So the reason I'm holding a line is just, we can create it, but then the committee needs to make a determination that that's where you want us to spend the time to present.
I don't feel strongly either way, but
Yeah.
so I'm open to whatever the committee would want.
Okay. Same.
I don't need it.
Okay.
Yeah, I would have to hear the pros and cons, and it sounds like there would be a burden of doing more work or potentially information that, I mean, I understand what Milo's saying, but at the same time, if you have limited bandwidth, I would prefer if you focus on the rest of the budget.
Future information. Well, or future information, like, we can provide the third quarterly report, which will give you the full quarter for the third one through. If people would like, or we could provide two, if that's what the whole committee would like.
I'm not hearing a lot of passion around it.
I prefer quarterly. That's what I'm used to, and it gives discrete buckets that you can compare to prior years and prior periods. This is good to see where we're at, getting ready to do a budget, a new biennial budget, but it doesn't give me the buckets to compare to prior periods.
But no motion.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
You want to continue?
Okay. So within this report, again, it's as of February 28th. Additionally, you will see that we have issued our CAFR, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, as of December 21st, with a completely clean opinion with no comment. So that's a good accomplishment, and Bonnie and the rest of the team spent a lot of time and effort on that. I will also note that the property tax information in this report has been updated for the taxes levies, and will show that the market rate is going up consistently. And that gap between the market and assessed is growing as the market goes up. The beginning balance information is rolled forward from last grade because it's for the beginning balances by name, so that does not change. The attorney fees schedule has been updated through on a quarterly basis. So,
Can we talk about that one just for one moment?
Yes.
So since we're going to be going into the budget, so everyone knows, the council is, or will be making a vote, I believe, this week in order to go to in-house services for attorneys. So we have worked on a job description, and we are planning on transitioning that direction based on council vote. So you're going to still see this, but it's going to be much clearer, because what we're going to do is centralize the costs to a single office, and you'll be tracking it from that perspective.
So it'd be another budget within the general fund?
It will be.
Okay.
Can we step back one page just really quickly? It's on a sort of a policy aside, mostly to the council, but I think you guys will note the chart and the vast difference between market value and assessed value. Look at the real numbers of what that means. actual honest-to-God numbers and think about the troubles we're having making ends meet. This is why, as we are doing our work with LOC and the state, that we need to put significant effort into some kind of property tax fix, because we've all seen that the way we're working is not sustainable, and were we just based on market value, we'd be fine.
And I think it disproportionately affects a city like Milwaukee than others, because we've seen such an increase in our property values compared to other cities in the state that we're not able to keep up.
And on the other end, we're an older town that's mostly built out, so we don't have a lot of new growth to sort of keep us alive, like Happy Valley or Wilsonville or somebody like that. We're particularly hammered by this. Yep. So, sorry, but it's kind of a big picture thing.
Very good point.
Is that a topic for the council to find solutions?
We do have on our agenda legislative.
It's on our legislative agenda, but it's a thing that we need to keep hammering with the League of Oregon Cities so that it stays top of their legislative agenda and the Metro Mayor's Council as well. It needs to be coming from all the cities all the time, because frankly the state kind of couldn't care less because they don't get much out of property taxes, except it would help fund the schools too.
And it's a state fix, so we can't do anything about it.
Right.
And it's a hard climb.
Yes.
I mean, let's be real. Yeah.
It's a big thing.
So a majority of why the state doesn't care is because the primarily revenue base for their budget is the state income tax, whereas cities like ours is the property tax.
Yep.
So, any other questions there? Okay, so then back to the attorney expense comparison. Any notes or comments?
I had a question on whether, when we know, from a budgeting standpoint, if we know that we're going to be doing a lot of work with respect to, say, for example, engineering, do we then change the budget for the city? Do we allocate a different amount than we normally would looking ahead? Because, I mean, some of these you can see, for example, engineering quite a bit more, finance is more because of the bond stuff. I mean, I understand why, but did we think ahead on budgeting different attorney fees amounts?
So SAFE was approved after the budget, so you wouldn't have had a chance on that one.
Okay.
So basically, these budget amounts, I believe the budget we're proposing for the attorney is at 200. What we're discussing is more at the $250,000 a year level, whereas here we're at 190. And we're looking at the percentage allocation over multiple years to kind of look at how we're going to transfer that. And then we'll take, after a year or two of actuals, we'll have the attorney reset those allocations based on how he or she is spending their time. So, but it'll be like an internal service fund where you take the $250 and you allocate it out to all of the user groups on a percentage basis.
And we are projecting that in some of those departments, they do have higher uses coming up.
Okay.
So for things like water or for sewer, if they were the ones who are going to see it, then they would have a higher allocation. If it's a general fund allocation, it's less important because I'm already funding a large percentage of the attorney out of those funds. So we are working on that right now. Haley's been talking to the directors about that as of 2 weeks ago. We're working on it.
And when I went through like my own budget, I looked at that. We're going to be doing phase 2 of the PCR, so I expect a higher rate in the one of the two. So again, we're looking at those project-based attorney type expenses and trying to build that into the allocation that we're proposing.
That was
One,
just question, yeah.
And just because we're already down this path a little bit for the budget committee members, just so you have some sense, we did receive a letter asking for a significant increase for our attorney fees. That's part of why we decided to go in-house. So as much as it sounds like 190 to 250 is a big jump, it's actually not when you look at what the requested increase was from the attorneys that we do currently contract with. And it was why it started to break even at that point, is because of that significant increase. I think it was almost $100 an hour that we were looking at in some cases. So it was substantial, and we believe that with that money, we're going to be presenting you both an in-house attorney as well as a contract for subset attorney work that they don't cover.
That's what I was going to ask, was if that 250 included the the estimation that we would also have contracted services for an attorney. Okay, cool.
Thank you.
So moving to page 3, we have the FTE summarized, and again, this is done on the quarterly basis through December 17th. Any questions or comments there?
What's going on in the water fund?
Water.
We're down to approximately 2 FTE. Just curious.
That was a good one. I
Peter?
expected someone to ask about police.
I know, and I
which is
can
almost
answer
down
that
2%. Peter Pasarelli, our public works director, is here.
I'm sorry, you had a question about
John.
the water?
Water FTE, we had a budgeted at 8.2 and we're running at about 6.2.
So we actually sort of held off on hiring the second FTE for a while because we wanted to spend some time training the first one that we hired in the summer. And we just recently hired our second person, started right at the March 1st, actually, beginning of the month. So we had a time, we wanted to spend some time training. We had a lot of turnover in the last year in water and wanted to spend some time with the new team that we were getting to make sure that they were trained.
So big.
So we're okay.
So we're up now, yeah.
It was by design.
Looking forward, 8 is still the number you think you need? Or?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely.
How does our police FTEs compare to other cities?
So we can get you that for the budget process. I know in the past when we've looked at it is higher than most cities on average per capita. There's different reasons for that we're going to present to you so that you guys can sort of weigh that out. You notice that we're currently down, and we made a policy decision this year around the
Photo radar.
Mm-hmm.
So when we eliminated that, we actually did not hire a replacement to that position. And so that's part of why you see a reduction at that 1.89. The 0.89 would be more fluctuation than hiring. But that one FTE is kind of more of the, we're not hiring it.
And so we've had 2 vacancies, including the photo radar, since last August, and a 3rd vacancy starting in December, which I guess wouldn't really be shown here too much. But they had to go through 2 rounds of recruiting. In the first round of recruiting that they did, nobody passed background, so they had to do a full new recruitment, and so that's also taken more time to get the person on board that left in August. So
I will say that the recruitment the second time around was exceptional.
Yes.
And the caliber of people who came through were exceptional. So we actually have a number of people who will pass their background and get through their training regimen.
That's part of it.
Yeah. Yep.
Perfect. Okay. So any other questions on the narrative part of the report? Okay. So again, moving into doing this report through February 28th, I was really benchmarking to the entire budget to kind of set us up for the next budget process. So the percentages are compared to the full biennium budget, whereas this would only be 83% of the way through the biennium. But a lot of the comments showed trends that we're projecting through year end here. So that's, again, a little bit different than what you're used to seeing. But the franchise fees, again, so we're showing 95% collected as of this report, when we're only 83%. Those are collected on a quarterly, semi-annual, or annual basis. I did factor in the PG payment, which we have gotten notice of, which was a little bit less than budgeted, but overall, we're projecting to increase about approximately $500K a year due to many of the changes related to the Title 21 changes that we implemented. And that includes 45 new row users that we've signed up as users that most likely were using our row before the code was in place, but because of the minimal use or the type of use, maybe the back and forth, they weren't required to have franchises, but they are required to pay usage fees under Title 21. So that's where you're seeing some of that impact. Intergovernmental revenue, again, You have a 2-month lag there with the state shared revenues, and some of it's grant-based. So that's why it's looking a little low. Licenses and permits. This is, it's actually, we've collected more than we projected because of the increase in development fees that we've seen. And we were working on projections to include what we anticipate coming in through the end of the year. There's a few large projects that over the next 3 years we have done separate estimates for that we will be including in the budget. Fines and forfeitures is where you have the biggest decrease of expecting. We're projecting with the decreased volume from the photo radar, as well as when we have vacancies in PD, the traffic police, the first task to be reassigned within the police. So we've seen a lower volume of normal traffic tickets, not just photo radar. So we're projecting about revenue to be reduced by about $850,000 in the biennium.
Are we starting to receive marijuana tax money yet? And that's in the intergovernmental?
I believe so, yes.
That'd be interesting.
It would either be an intergovernmental or miscellaneous. We have, I'm working on how to approach that conversation with the attorney. We have signed agreements with the state to collect the tax, but also whether or not they're collecting it. The state has advised cities that we need to be careful about how we present the marijuana tax information because it is based on a percentage of revenue. So, and we have a very limited number of actual dispensaries within the city, and so we have to be careful about how we disseminate that information so that we're not disclosing proprietary information. So I can say that we've collected significantly more than what we had
So we need more
projected.
dispensaries then. Camouflage thing?
If you just want the information, yes, we need.
So, and what we have collected in this year is higher than what, so we got one disbursement in the first quarter of this year. That was for the whole program up until like August, because the state hadn't made any distributions. Because, so that it started, I think, was implemented in January of 2016, I want to say. We're trying to.
You're doing good. You're good.
Okay.
You're great.
Just wanted to give some basis. So they, the first 2 year and a half of that, I think, is shared, but the state got to take their money out first. But we got significantly more in that chunk, but that's not representative of what we'll get going forward. They told us to use the second quarter, which we got in December, to project. It's still more than what we had been budgeting, which is, well, from a programmatic perspective, I don't have an opinion, but from a dollar perspective, that's good. So, but I want to confirm with the attorney how to approach giving you that information better for the budget conversation.
Fascinating problem.
Sorry. So that's my vague way of not answering your question. Okay?
Yep, thanks.
Additionally, miscellaneous revenue is over what expected, primarily due to interest revenue. So we've got a lot of money in the bank, and the economy's picked up. So the interest rate on the local investment, the local government investment pool, LGIP, has increased significantly over the last year. So that is helping our budget. Generally, when I talk about budgets, if you talk about recurring and non-recurring revenue, we'll hear more of that as we go into the budget cycle. Interest is one of the things we get every time, but I count it as non-recurring because it fluctuates so much. So,
What rate are they paying right now?
I should have known that. Do you know off the top of your head? I will have to look at that. I can email that out.
That's right, thanks.
That has been going up. Any questions on the revenue side of the general fund? Okay. So moving into the expenditure side, I tried to outline again where we are projecting to be in some of these funds that seem lower. So 6C is lower because of the vacancies we had in staffing. We're now fully staffed in the city manager's office with the hire of Kelly Burks, our new assistant city manager. So we did have obviously realized some savings there that we will maintain. Your city manager is being very diligent with how she's spending her funds and made up the loss that we overexpended in the attorney fund last year. So they will return some money to the general fund. Community development is very project-based, so that's why it's not consistent throughout the period. Again, we are working very hard to get our year-end projections within line for the upcoming budget, so that's why that is low. Public Works Administration, you'll note, I noted in there that the personal services was actually much higher because of the payouts of the prior Public Works Director. So we will actually be bringing forward with the budget a supplemental budget for your guys' consideration because those costs, we actually were ahead of that hiring process. He gave us good notice, so we had our new Public Works Director on board by the time the old one left, which is great for cross-training, but not great from personal savings when we have payouts. Mm-hmm. And as we talked about in the last one, we are looking at payouts of where we are aware there may be retirements in the next biennium and trying to build that into the budget where we can. The engineering services you'll see is low. That's primarily due to
difficulty in hiring engineers.
Yes, and turnover of engineers. So in the supplemental budget for SAFE, we did build in where we thought we'd get hires and whatnot, and so we have had a hard time hiring there.
How come you're 2.5 above in engineers?
In the budget?
Yeah.
Because for the SAFE program was adopted after we had adopted the budget, and so those FTEs were not in the budget, and we're comparing the FTE in that schedule is based on the budget. So there was 2 FTE, I believe, just downstairs, 2 or 3 FTE built into the 25-year SAFE program, and there's another 3 built into an accelerated program that we got direction from council to use. So we're actually proceeding with hiring those 3 more. So we're going from, you will see us proposing going from 5 FTE to 11.5 FTE in the next budget due to the increased development of the SAFE program.
So we're moving engineers over here.
Any other questions there?
So there's a bit of a disconnect, I think, that he identified, is that your FTE is up, but your spending is down.
Right.
I know.
Okay.
I know.
It's the time lag thing.
That's due to, we supplemented the budget for the increase in FTE for at least the 2. And then we haven't been fully staffed the entire biennium.
Okay.
On facilities management, it is down due to some changes in staffing, but we are planning to come in closer to budget. The expenditure, the materials and services and capital outlay is project-based. And we're actually pursuing with some projections of some other savings in this year, potentially bringing forward some other capital projects to use. So that may be also included in the supplemental budget for an increase, even though it looks like they haven't spent very much. Finance is higher than anticipated. It actually shows right about on budget, but we're projecting to come in higher because of bank charges. Bank charges are charged on a volume of transaction basis, and we've had a very big uptake in the building permits fees. So the percentage that we're paying in fees on that is higher than we anticipated.
That doesn't get marked against the permit budget, the building inspection budget?
So currently, all of the fees are coming into finance, and then we do not update our transfers generally. So what I'm actually looking at in the updated budget is that those fees will go to the different programs rather than going into that general fund to better correlate to the revenues, because again, the bank charges are not consistent as the general fund gets most of its revenue through property taxes, which we don't have to pay any fees on, or some of those other ones, whereas over-the-counter fees like utility bills and the building permits, which those building permit fees are restricted to the building fund, the fees aren't correlating now because of that uptick in volume.
Bank fees, they charge us to deposit money?
No, it's the credit card fees. So if someone pays their
Okay.
permit with a
All right,
credit card,
of course.
and our
Nobody
permitting
wants to
system
have
is
cash
primarily
anymore.
online, so we're encouraging that. In many cities, I've seen where they don't permit things like SDC fees and other charges like that, which are large dollar amounts to be paid by credit card. We don't have any limits on that. So I'm starting that kind of conversation with our
Sounds
building
like a good
inspector.
conversation to have.
Because there's different ways to structure your account where you either pass through those fees, you include an assessment of the fee into your actual permit fees, but then when you have people pay cash, they're paying a higher fee that includes that. And then the other proposal was that you actually discount if you pay in cash. So there's different ways to do that, but we haven't factored that in.
PR-wise, that last one's best.
Really?
Yeah, because people think, oh, cool, I can get a deal.
A discount.
Versus charging more if you're using a credit card. And
Yeah.
it is a good service to be able to allow that access, especially since a lot of contractors use short-term financing while they're building and different things like that. But it's a huge, it can have a huge effect on how you're collecting
Yeah.
when your fee is 2 to 5% of whatever you're collecting.
Yeah.
Could also potentially
Actual
put
money.
$1,000 in cash though, and that could be a bit of an audit.
But cash or check, right? Because a check
Right,
would
a
get charged.
check would not,
People still have checks?
Yep,
especially companies.
businesses do.
Or can you do an EFT kind of thing? Yeah.
You probably could, but again, then you get into other control issues.
Yeah.
But we will definitely be looking, we've already started talking to our building official to look at that fee structure, as I said, that her fees are going up and we're absorbing that,
Yeah.
so we will be looking at changing that in the new budget. So she's interested in pursuing that conversation as well.
Yeah.
So, then moving down to information technology, again, it looks like we haven't spent very much. Our IT manager has done a great job of going through our contracts and reducing our materials and services, but council did approve 2 large capital purchases with the upgraded network equipment and the upgrade in the VoIP phone system, so we don't expect a significant amount of savings by the end of the biennium.
Do the new radars and all that the policemen get and everything, is that in there?
The radios?
Yeah.
We are actually, the initial capital cost is being borne by the PD and then the Public Works for the number of radios that they're doing, so we'll actually see it in those budgets. And we are including those in our projection for year end, which you'll get later. They are not in this number because we have not actually received or paid that bill, but we do anticipate doing that by year end. So moving on to records and information management. So here is where at the beginning of the biennium, when Pat, our old city recorder, retired, there was a plan set in motion by our previous city manager and upheld by our current city manager to reorganize that department. So they were budgeted for 4 FTE, but we're planning to maintain them at 3 FTE, so there are savings that will be realized there. About $100,000 for the biennium, because part of it was absorbed through a contract expense in the city manager's office through a supplemental budget. So in the biennium, we will actually realize more than $100,000 going forward by that reduction of 1 person. Non-departmental is not actually off for here, but projected not to have significant savings. That's where you have your insurance and other things, so those are front-loaded in the year. Okay, and then police admin and police service, police support services are actually projected to be to come in high in the personal services. Police admin is because of, again, a key retirement and payout, and support services I think just has to do again with the timing of hires. But the police field services is predicted to come in significantly lower because of those vacancies you guys noted in the FTE count. So any questions on the general fund? debt service fund is on track. We will pay all of our debt on time. Good track record as we're pursuing more debt. And the building inspections fund, again, is on track from a projection standpoint. I didn't note anything here. They may be a little bit off if we would have charged them their bank fees, but we'll do that going forward. In the library fund, you'll note that there is, we received $1 million from the county for the capital projects. Intergovernmental revenue is actually, the district is on track and projected actually to come in a little high. One of the bigger things is in miscellaneous. You'll note that miscellaneous revenue, because of those bond proceeds, which are sitting in the LGIP account, that again, we're getting more interest than we expected. We've already identified that interest will have to go towards the deficit that we have in the project budget for the actual improvement project. But you'll note that I'm projecting the $200,000 in the current year. By the end of the current year, I'll have the full $200,000 that I had recommended towards the project. So I'm including an updated projection that should get us at least another $100,000 towards the project in the next biennium in interest. And then the proceeds from the issuance of debt, again, we got the premium that was noted last year. Then materials and services look like it's overspent because some of the project costs that were used for bond issuance cost and for professional services related to the issuance of, or related to the bond ballot measure were charged to materials and services rather than capital outlay. But overall, in this biennium, since a significant amount of the project costs won't come until the next biennium, they're not out of compliance. That said, we do have a significant deficit in the project budget, which their task force and the council has been working very hard to bridge, and we'll get there. Any other questions there? So overall, in the transportation fund on page 9, you'll just note that lots of the fee and lieu and other intergovernmental revenue is based on projects as well as capital outlay. So those again look quite low, partly because a lot of things are shifting and or happening in this last period of the year when the weather's better for construction. So moving on to the SSMP program. Again, fee and lieu is recognized when applicable project costs are noted. So the projects that we had budgeted to recognize the fee and lieu haven't been completed yet, so we haven't recognized the corresponding revenue. We will have updated projections for all of these. We've started to do that projection with what we presented to you in the project status report, but those will all be reconciled, the revenue and expense, in the proposed budget coming forward. In the SAFE, you'll note we have started engineering, but again, as that was just implemented, oh my gosh, almost a year and a half ago now with the fee collection, most of the projects haven't actually been completed yet. Some of that was also on hold depending on where we went as far as an accelerator and our non-accelerated program. So we've now moved fully forward with hiring and moving forward with the accelerated program.
What's miscellaneous in the safe fee?
Interest.
Thank you, of course. Yeah, thank you. Pretty much it.
Yes.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. I'll keep that in mind. Thank you.
Any other questions from those two? So moving forward with the state gas tax program, so the ongoing state gas tax is trending down, but the state implemented an increased gas tax in January. So we've kind of broken those out in the next budget, but we're pretty much on track. We should end up a little bit ahead in the current year. This was the first year of that increase, and it's a stepped approach, so that will continue to build the new gas tax. The benchline gas tax is declining as the use of gas is going down. overall. Miscellaneous is interest, and capital outlay again is project-based. With a few significant projects being wrapped up in the next couple months, 42nd and a few others.
When does the increase start from the
Gas
bill?
tax. So we actually, I believe the state started collecting that in January. So we get half of a year in this biennium and then a full, it'll be in place for the
And
whole
it's
next biennium.
at one level now, and then a year or 2 years.
So
it
in the
comes up.
budget, I'm actually using the state projection. So the first year we were only expected to get, I can't even put out a number, but much, maybe 6 figures, maybe 100,000. But then it'll build up to, I think next year it's closer to 300, and then it goes up from there. And the state has to hit certain benchmarks to go to some of the increases. Kelly Brooks could probably speak to that. But in the budget, I'm using exactly what the state had projected for that. And they knew about the actual trends in the downtick of gas usage when they did those projections. So I assume they've all been built into those. Any questions on transportation? Okay, so moving to the water fund. Materials and services is low because there's been less electric use than anticipated, primarily, and less facilities repairs, which again are based on project-based type things as needed. And then the capital outlay is lower than expected, just due to timing of projects. Wastewater, you'll see that, again, in both of those, the interest, miscellaneous, and then the intergovernmental is grant-based, so that would be based on when we expended the money for the grant. Any questions there? Stormwater, again, haven't noticed much besides interest and capital outlay. And system development charges are fully based on projects. And then you'll see the revenue's high because that's based on development. So we collect SDCs at the time we issue a building permit. So again, we're looking at better projections as these should go up as there is more development in the next couple of years.
So the SDCs don't go to their specific thing?
So they are tracked by type. We have one fund, but we have them balanced to streets, sewer, water, things, but we keep them all in one fund. Okay. And then you have to have allowable cost of each of those things to be able, of the different ones to be able to use them. So they are balanced to the utility that they're collected for. Mm-hmm. And then the projects have to be allowable in that utility to be able to be used.
Right. So back up to stormwater for a quick sec.
Yes.
The properties that we're purchasing and the right-of-way that we're purchasing to do the work along the railroad, basically. Mm-hmm. Does that come out of this budget, or is there a different budget that comes out of?
I can answer that by looking at the project worksheet. It is the Meek Street project, so that is, it's in the stormwater fund.
It is.
Yes. And the right-of-way purchases, so again, do we have any other questions on the detailed sheet, and then we can jump into the project worksheet? Urban renewal, so it's low. The revenue there, I'm going to note, is low. We had anticipated that we would collect $130,000. That was the budget. Based on the URA annual report, when we got the frozen basin amount levied, this county only levied, I want to say, around $93,000. So we will come in lower than what we anticipated. And that is due to the frozen base being lower to start with. So with the development, we anticipate it'll pick up. over time, but the first year they only levied about 93,000 when they were for renewal, so it will come in lower than anticipated.
Before we look at capital, is it still true that with FILOC, if it's not used after 10 years, it goes back to the current property owner?
Urban renewal?
No, FILOC.
I think we got rid of that.
I was thinking we did too.
We spent
But wouldn't the old
years ago.
ones be under that? Grandfathered in?
Good question.
So-
Chuck isn't here. Can we get you a response from Randy?
Yeah, that'd be fine. 'Cause I was curious how much of that is at risk.
Yeah.
I believe that we're actually anticipated to spend a good chunk of it in the next year based on eligible projects.
Right, we'll use it on the safe stuff. So,
That's a great question. We'll get your response. Just as a reminder, we're at
15 minutes. So, again, project status report. Again, a little unconventional as the column second to the left says projected total biennium. So if you look at fiscal year 17, fiscal year 18, they will not add in many lines to the projected year end because I used the information from our public works department and our engineering department to try to get to where we'd be at the end of the biennium because that's the information we're moving forward. This information is still being developed. Over the next month, we'll have more information as projects proceed or don't proceed, so those numbers will change, but I wanted to kind of get a benchmark to where we'd be at the end of the year. So with that said, does anyone have any questions on like the general funds?
So this is the only place you've done a projection for the
Right.
biennium, okay.
Right, so in the other financial reports, I did through activity through
Right.
February to give you the most up-to-date, but I didn't project it. Here in this line, I've actually taken what we think we will spend. So these two numbers obviously don't add up to the projected number.
So for example, the water fund this year has spent like $92,000 so far. Capital outlay. Well, it seems like not very much. I could go to here and figure out that they're going to spend a lot more than that.
They're going to spend more between now and the end of the year. But they should still, I mean, we're still projecting to come in significantly under budget. Overall.
This is nice, and when I asked about earlier in the email about having a capital review at the end of the budget process, this is the sort of thing I was asking for.
Just a summary like this?
Yeah, a summary just like this.
Okay.
Because 2 years ago, it was all piecemealed into all individual budgets, and we never saw a summary like this.
Okay. So this actually won't be too far off of the summary sheets that are in the CIP document that we do put in there. So if the goal is just to spend a few minutes talking about the summaries that are already there, that's most likely doable. If you're looking for a different presentation, I'll have to compare this to those to see what the presentation is. But if you're looking for a different presentation, then that's one of the things at that first meeting we'll want to talk to about as a committee to see if it's not what you're looking for. To see if the whole committee wants something else. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Perfect. Any questions? Do people on the project status report? Are there specific things where you're at, where you're going?
You're not going to read through each one?
It's
It's not really my stuff.
well, some of them are fascinating.
You know.
Enthusiasts
no
over.
harm, but
Automatic parts washing
Jesse,
machine
that's your
for
nighttime
fleet,
reading.
$14,000. Reading that?
Skip the storybooks tonight.
I'm having trouble going to sleep. Capital report.
So with that said, I don't have any other notes if people don't have other questions on this report.
I had one question going back to property taxes for
Okay.
So we've collected 6.953. Do we get more like the last 4 months of the year? Or does
Yes. at a much lower rate. So again,
Right.
it's not collected consistently.
Right.
So it's not 1/12 of what we've collected so far.
So if somebody pays late, we'll get it.
Right, and we do consistently get something for the next several months, but you get a bulk of it in December. So, but a 96% collection rate is really good. We'll probably get to 98%.
Okay.
So we are trending a little bit low, but we will get more funds at each month. So with that said, I was just going to note the budget process updates. We've got 5 minutes. One is that first meeting, April 3rd, is when April 30th, not 3rd.
Thank you.
I need that extra, time. We all need that extra time. But we'll be the first meeting. We've set the meetings for Mondays. There'll be 3 consecutive weeks in a row. That first meeting, you'll get the document. We'll do the budget overview. We'll set rules like what we just talked about. The committee can agree that any request of the committee, if it's just informational, I can look at the information and answer it. I'll respond all to the group. If somebody's asking for the generation of something new, then hopefully the committee will agree that it would be the vote. A majority of the committee would have to vote to get that information prepared. Things like that. What we want to do if we identify something that needs more discussion, but we want to make sure we get through the department presentations, we can talk about making a list and coming back to it at the end of the night, or coming back to it at the last meeting that we end up with.
Kind of a parking lot type of thing.
Right. So we used to call it a bubble list at my past entity, but we can call it whatever we'd like. So we'll go through all of that and kind of set the ground rules for the budget process at that meeting. You may or may not have, given my news today, have another citizen member. So that will affect what our quorum is. At that first meeting, you get the document, we do the overview. We won't start department presentations until the next meeting. At that first meeting, we will tell you which departments will be presenting at the second meeting versus the third meeting, so you know which parts of the document to present. Any other questions, concerns?
So with 4 members, there's enough to go through the process, right?
Right, so actually the state law resets. And I'd have to relook at it, but I think if there's a vacancy on one side, it's either the council side or the citizen side, the number gets reset, so the quorum's less. And if it's on the other side, it doesn't reset for some reason. But we'll go with Oregon budget law, and we'll still be able to go through even if we aren't able to get that filled. But like I said, I'll talk to Scott tomorrow about trying to get those applications out. It's very odd because I was literally at a meeting and someone asked how they get on it. So we may have interested parties already, but as soon as we get that posted, we'll send it to you guys and get in place so you guys have people who you know are interested as well. And we'll go through a process to get them on board as soon as possible.
Chuck, there was a question on FELOC, and I was wondering if you could maybe answer it. What happens if FELOC at 10 years, does it transfer back to people, or do we maintain those funds?
That was a change that council authorized a year and a half ago now.
Yeah.
So it has to be obligated in 10 years, which means that it has to be earmarked for a specific project within that NDA. And then depending on the timing of the project, it may be 10 or 12. Right now, our oldest FELOC's only about 6 years old. We've spent everything else out of the fund. We spent a lot out of FELOC this budget.
But you have to spend it within a neighborhood?
Yes, it is restricted to within the neighborhood it's received in.
And so
We need to talk about how Island Station could volunteer some of that to save funds around schools, because we don't have a school.
What kind of balance are we talking about?
I did not bring that sheet.
But we can get you that
Well, I was just wondering from a
Yeah.
materiality standpoint, if it was $1,000 versus.
It was fairly significant at the beginning of the program, but it's, 42nd, for example, all of the sidewalk work is FELOC on 42nd.
So, but we'll be doing Weaver and 22nd
So
We could use that.
Yeah.
I think we're projected to use it all in the next
in the safe program. That's a safe program.
No, there's some in some NDAs that are farther out, like the industrial area, FELOC, and the Milwaukee industrial area, that neighborhood. So that won't be used until we do the work on, I can't remember the name of the road for some.
But will it be earmarked before that?
Yeah, it is earmarked already for those SAFE programs.
Yeah.
So then there's no risk of losing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so there are a few of the other outlying NDAs that still have some funds there.
Okay.
Because they are still considered NDA. NMIA and the Milwaukee industrial area are both considered specialized areas. So one of those industries pays a fee lot if it goes in that area.
Yeah. So if they paid it under the old rules, it's been changed now to where we can use it.
Like I said, we don't have anything that's over about 6 years right now.
So even
Everything's been spent.
There was some that had been on there for
Right. We did make one.
coming up closed.
We had one that didn't earmark in the Island Station neighborhood, believe it or not, that went back to the property owner.
I know.
That was a happy dance.
Do you use FIFO or LIFO?
It goes to the current property owner regardless of who paid it.
Yeah,
So somebody got a bonus.
that's what I mean. The happy dance.
Does he have any comments?
Yeah, a little sense.
I would,
So with that, I look forward to working with all of you this budget.
Thank you, Haley. Good report.
good job, Anna.
So if we had an idea where we thought the year end was going to end up in some of these funds of interest, we could provide that to you. You could like look at it and say, oh, that's interesting.
If what?
What?
You're going to have to make projections on fund balances and stuff like
Right.
that. Ultimately,
Right.
it's fund balance. If we have a projection on where we think things are going to end up,
Yeah, if you
I can
have,
send it to you.
I don't have a magic 8 ball, so if you have information that we should consider, I'm more than happy to.
And if you're right, we'll even buy you
I've
like a
come up
cup of
with a new
coffee.
format for the enterprise funds where I take revenues less expenditures and then amount available for reserves and capital outlays and then capital outlays. So you're identifying, the ongoing operations from the capital. I think it's easier to track how the change in balances occur. Well, I had this shortfall in revenues less expenses. I had this change in capital outlays, and I had this change in beginning balance. And you can track it all through. Right now, it's very difficult to track.
You are welcome to send me your format. We will be discussing more recurring revenue and recurring expense. So that's basically your expenses, not including capital outlays. Sometimes you do have one-time expenses in your materials and services. You really shouldn't have one-time expenses in your personal services because they would be a contracted materials and services unless you had a temporary employee identified, and at this time I don't believe we
don't
are
have any.
pursuing any of those. So, but we will be looking at how to summarize that a little bit better than we have in the past.
Okay.
To track that conversation. Which might be helpful. But if you have a format.
Well, I was just playing with it over the weekend.
Okay.
With that Saturday night email that you sent.
Yeah.
The excitement grows.
I motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Very good.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Thanks, you guys.